The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Jakara entered the United Nations Assembly Hall. His 4 eyes scanned the room with barely concealed contempt. The tall, blue-skinned alien wore robes that shimmered with embedded technology, marking him as a representative of the Galactic Concordat. Behind him, holographic displays flickered to life, showing an armada of 10,000 warships hovering just beyond Earth's moon. Humans of Earth. Jakara's voice boomed through translation devices embedded in every seat. You have been found in violation of the Treaty of Contained Expansion. Your colonies spread too far, too fast. Your military developments violate protocols established for civilized species. The Concordat Council has deliberated. You will surrender immediately. Marcus Chen sat in the front row, his face carefully neutral. As Earth's primary ambassador to alien species, he had spent 5 years studying the Concordat's history, their wars, their methods. He knew what came next. Jakara continued. You will dismantle your military installations. You will accept Concordat oversight of all technological development. Your colonies beyond the inner system will be evacuated. Every point. Ender. Building. These terms are not negotiable. You have 72 hours to comply. Refuse, and your cities will burn. The delegates erupted in angry shouts. Some called for defiance, others begged for negotiation. Jakara watched with the patience of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. In his experience, primitive species always surrendered. They lacked the courage to face annihilation. Marcus stood slowly. Ambassador Jakara, we request the full 72 hours to consider your terms and present them to our global government. Jakara's translator stuttered, confused. Consider? There is nothing to consider. You will comply or die. This is the way of civilized space. Nevertheless, Marcus said calmly, we request the time you have offered. The alien's 4 eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong. Humans should be panicking, begging, offering immediate surrender. Instead, this one stood with quiet confidence. Still, the Concordat fleet was overwhelming. Very well, Jakara said finally. 3 of your planetary rotations. Then we return for your answer. As the alien delegation departed, Marcus remained standing until the chamber doors sealed. Then, he activated his secure comm device. Admiral Volkov, this is Chen. The clock is running. 40,000 kilometers above Earth, inside a hollowed-out asteroid that had been towed into high orbit decades ago, Admiral Elena Volkov watched the Concordat fleet through tactical displays. Her silver hair was pulled back tight, her dark eyes calculating distances and firing solutions. 72 hours, she said to her command staff. They gave us exactly what we needed. Her second-in-command, Captain James Morrison, looked uncertain. Our defensive platforms are well hidden, but we only have 1,200 vessels ready for combat. The math doesn't favor us. Elena smiled, a cold expression that never reached her eyes. Captain, you're thinking like they think. The Concordat has fought the same way for 1,000 years. Overwhelming force. Psychological dominance. Species that surrender before the first shot is fired. They've forgotten how to fight an enemy that bites back. She pulled up a star chart. 50 years ago, when the Concordat made first contact, what did we tell them about ourselves? Oh no. That we were peaceful explorers, Morrison answered. That we wanted friendship and trade. And we did want those things, Elena said. But we also learned from history. Every species the Concordat encountered either submitted or was destroyed. So while our diplomats smiled and signed treaties, our engineers worked in secret. We studied their ships, their weapons, their tactics. We learned their weaknesses. She tapped a control, and the holographic display changed. The moon rotated slowly. Then its surface split apart in the simulation. Thousands of warships emerged from beneath the regolith. Morrison's eyes widened. Luna base. But that would mean, we've been hollowing out the moon for 47 years. Elena confirmed. While the Concordat thought we were mining for resources, we were building the largest hidden shipyard in human history. Right now, 6,000 ships are waiting in Luna's underground hangars. Another 4,000 are scattered through the asteroid belt, powered down and hidden. When Jakara returns in 72 hours, he's going to learn that humans don't kneel. She turned to her communications officer. Send the activation code. Protocol Black Midnight is now in effect. I want all ships at battle stations in 60 hours. We need time for crews to board and final system checks. Yes, Admiral. As the officer sent the encrypted signal across the solar system, Elena walked to the observation window. Earth hung below, blue and beautiful. She had been born in Moscow, lived through the first alien contact, watched humanity transform from scattered nations into a united species. But unity came with a price. The military buildup had been kept secret from most civilians. Underground factories on Mars, automated construction facilities in the Kuiper Belt, conscription hidden as colonial worker programs. They had built an armada in the shadows, knowing this day would come. Captain Morrison, she said quietly, do you know why I chose Black Midnight as the protocol name? No, Admiral. Because midnight is when the prey discovers the predator was hunting it all along. 72 hours later, Ambassador Jakara returned to Earth orbit aboard his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. Behind his vessel, the Concordat fleet spread across space in a formation designed for maximum intimidation. 10,000 ships, their weapons powered and ready. Jakara had received reports that no human military vessels had moved into defensive positions. No frantic evacuation of cities had begun. The humans were either paralyzed with fear or foolishly confident in last-minute diplomacy. Open communications with their planetary government, he ordered. Marcus Chen's face appeared on the main screen. He stood in the UN chamber, and Jakara could see other human leaders behind him. All of them looked calm. Too calm. Ambassador Jakara, Marcus said formally. Earth's united government has considered your ultimatum. Our answer is no. Jakara felt a flash of anger. Then, you choose extinction. Very well. Your stubbornness will serve as an example to other species who might consider defiance. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their largest population centers. Prepare to. Before you fire, Marcus interrupted. There's something you should see. The human gestured, and suddenly every Concordat ship received an override transmission. Their main screens lit up with a view of Earth's moon. Jakara watched in confusion as the lunar surface began to crack. Massive fault lines spread across Mare Tranquillitatis, Oceanus Procellarum, and dozens of other regions. Then, impossibly, sections of the moon's surface lifted away. What is this? Jakara whispered. This, Marcus said, is what we've been building while you thought we were primitive and harmless. The moon opened like a flower, its surface splitting into massive petals of stone and regolith. From beneath emerged ships. Not hundreds, thousands. They poured from underground hangars, their hulls black as space itself, marked only with white identification numbers and the blue and white flag of United Earth. Jakara's tactical officer stammered. Sir, I'm counting. 3,000, 4,000. They're still launching. Sir. There are at least 6,000 capital ships emerging from the lunar surface. Impossible, Jakara breathed. We've monitored this system for 50 years. We would have detected construction on this scale. You monitored our communication satellites, our civilian traffic, our open research facilities, Marcus said. You never thought to look inside the moon itself. While your scouts watched our outer colonies, we dug deep. While your diplomats met with our politicians, our engineers worked in buried factories. You taught us about your technology. We made it better. The human ships spread into formation, moving with precision that spoke of countless hours of drill and preparation. They weren't larger than Concordat vessels, but there were more than Jakara had ever imagined possible. Then his sensors officer shouted, Admiral, multiple new contacts appearing across the system. I'm reading 4,000 additional vessels powering up in the asteroid belt, and there are structures in the Kuiper belt activating. Sir, they have weapons platforms out to 50 astronomical units. Jakara felt cold understanding wash over him. The humans hadn't just prepared a defense. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and the Concordat had flown directly into the trap. This is Admiral Elena Volkov of the United Earth Defense Force, a new voice said over the channel. On screen appeared a human female with gray hair and hard eyes. Ambassador Jakara. Your fleet is now targeted by 10,000 human vessels and 300 orbital weapons platforms. You came here to make us kneel. Instead, you're going to learn what happens when you threaten humanity's home. Jakara tried to maintain his composure. You are still outnumbered. Our weapons are. Your weapons use coherent energy beams and plasma projection, Elena interrupted. We know. We've studied the wreckage from every ship that ever malfunctioned in this system. We've analyzed every scan your vessels made of our infrastructure. While you assumed we were too primitive to understand your technology, we were reverse engineering it and improving it. She made a gesture, and 20 human ships broke formation. They accelerated toward the Concordat fleet at speeds that made Jakara's sensors scream warnings. The human vessels weren't dodging or weaving. They were charging straight at his defensive lines. All ships, open fire. Kara commanded. Energy beams lanced out, striking the approaching human ships. But instead of burning through hull metal, the beams seemed to splash against the vessel's surfaces and dissipate. The human ships didn't have shields like Concordat technology used. They had something else. Armor that absorbed energy and channeled it away. The 20 human ships reached the Concordat line and opened fire. Their weapons were primitive kinetic railguns, firing solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. Against shields, such weapons would be useless, but the humans weren't aiming at ships. They were firing into the spaces between vessels, releasing clouds of thousands of small projectiles. Jakara's fleet tried to maneuver, but they were in a tight intimidation formation. The projectile clouds spread through the formation like shrapnel. Ships collided, trying to avoid the swarms. Point defense systems overloaded, trying to target thousands of individual threats. 3 Concordat vessels suffered catastrophic damage as the metal fragments punched through their hulls at a significant fraction of light speed. They're using swarm tactics, his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. Primitive, but effective against massed formations. Sir, they've studied our doctrine. They know we rely on grouped fleets for concentrated firepower. They're turning our strength into a weakness. Elena's voice came over the channel again. You have one chance, Jakara. Order your fleet to stand down. Power down weapons and surrender. Or we show you what else we've learned from studying your people. Jakara felt his confidence crumbling, but he was Concordat. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They did not surrender to primitives. The Concordat does not yield to threats. All ships, advance and engage, Elena sighed. And even through the translation systems, Jakara heard the disappointment. So be it. All ships, execute Fenrir Protocol. The human fleet moved as one. Ships that had been holding position suddenly scattered in 1,000 different vectors. They didn't move in organized squadrons like civilized fleets. They moved like a pack of predators surrounding prey. Concordat ships tried to track targets, but the humans used random acceleration patterns that made targeting solutions impossible. Then the humans revealed their second surprise. Spread throughout the battle space, previously invisible objects suddenly activated. Jakara's sensors identified them as mines, but they weren't static explosives. They were small nuclear devices, pumping lasers. As Concordat ships passed near the mines, invisible laser beams lanced out, striking vessels from unexpected angles. Shields designed to stop frontal attacks were penetrated from the sides and rear. More Concordat ships took damage. Shkara watched in horror as his orderly fleet dissolved into chaos. The humans weren't fighting fair. They weren't following the accepted rules of space warfare. They were using every dirty trick, every unconventional tactic that civilized species had abandoned centuries ago. "Fall back," he ordered. "Reform at distance," and his flagship shuddered. Something had attached to the hull. Then, more impacts. His tactical display showed dozens of small objects, magnetically clamping onto the Eternal Judgment's surface. "What are those?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. They appear to be some kind of boarding pods, but they're too small for—" The lights flickered. Jacra's command screen went dark, then rebooted with human text scrolling across it. "What's happening?" What's happening? "Sir, they're hacking our systems. The boarding pods contain AI-guided cyber warfare packages. They've breached our network security, and they're downloading our fleet coordination protocols." Jkara felt true fear for the first time in his long military career. These humans didn't just fight with weapons. They fought with information warfare, with psychological tactics, with weapons that civilized species had deemed too cruel or dishonorable to use. Elena's face appeared on his screen again, superimposed over his own ship's tactical data. "Ambassador Jkara, your fleet coordination is compromised. We now have access to your command network. We can see every order you give before your ships receive it. Your fleet is blind, and we are inside your head." Jkara looked at his tactical display. In just 30 minutes of combat, he had lost 200 ships, not destroyed, but damaged severely enough to be combat ineffective. His fleet was in disarray, and the humans had barely taken any casualties. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did you prepare for this? We've been monitoring you since first contact." Marcus Chen reappeared on screen beside Admiral Volkov. "Because we're human, Ambassador. Every nation on Earth spent the last 5,000 years fighting wars. We know deception. We know survival. We know how to smile while sharpening knives. The Concordat forgot what it means to face a species that evolved as persistence hunters and tribal warriors. You became comfortable. We never did." Jkara made his decision. "Eternal judgment to all Concordat vessels. Stand down. Power down weapons. We surrender." His bridge crew stared at him in shock. In 10,000 years of Concordat history, their fleets had never surrendered. They had always been the ones receiving capitulation. But as Jkara looked at the tactical display, at the human ships circling his battered fleet like sharks around wounded prey, he understood a terrible truth. The Concordat had never fought anyone who wanted to fight back. They had enforced peace through overwhelming force, crushing any species that showed military capability before they could become a threat. The humans had hidden their capability. Let the Concordat think they were weak. And then, when the trap was sprung, the humans had shown they weren't just warriors. They were apex predators, who had been waiting patiently for the right moment to strike. Elena's voice was cold and professional. "Concordat vessels will form a single-file line and proceed to designated holding coordinates in Earth's L4 Lagrange point. Any ship that deviates from course will be destroyed. Admiral Jkara, you and your senior staff will be transferred to United Earth custody. You are prisoners of war." As Concordat Marines boarded his flagship and began escorting his crew to detention cells, Jkara had one final thought. The Concordat Council needed to know what had happened here. But more importantly, they needed to understand what it meant. Humanity hadn't just defended themselves. They had been planning this for decades. The military buildup, the hidden fleets, the unconventional tactics. All of it suggested that humans had been preparing for war since the moment of first contact. And if this was just Earth's defensive fleet, what else were they building in the darkness of space? As human soldiers escorted him from his bridge, Jkara realized the Concordat had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't encountered a primitive species ready to be absorbed into galactic civilization. They had woken up something that had been waiting in the dark, patient and hungry, for 50 years. They had found humanity. And humanity had been ready. The Concordat Council Chamber existed in a space station orbiting the capital world of Zenthar Prime, 400 light-years from Earth. The council consisted of representatives from the 70 most powerful species in the Concordat, though in truth, only 12 species held real power. The rest were client states, vassals who voted as they were told. High Counselor Vormath of the Zentharian Empire stood before the assembled delegates, his scaled face grim. Behind him, holographic recordings played on repeat, human ships emerging from Luna, the Battle of Earth orbit, and most damning of all, Admiral Jakara's surrender. "This is unprecedented," Vormath said, his voice heavy. "In 10,000 years, no Concordat fleet has surrendered to a primitive species. The humans defeated a force 10 times their size using tactics we deemed too barbaric for civilized warfare." Counselor Telena of the Asurian Collective, a species that looked like floating jellyfish, pulsed with bioluminescent concern. "What do we know about their current military capacity?" "Not enough," Vormath admitted. "Our intelligence completely failed to detect their military buildup. The lunar shipyards, the hidden fleet, all of it was constructed right under our observation. We believe they may have additional forces we have not yet discovered. Then we send the Grand Fleet," Counselor Drakthon of the Krillian Dominion said. The insectoid species was one of the Concordat's primary military powers. 2 million ships. We overwhelm them with numbers they cannot possibly match. "At what cost?" Telena asked. "If we mobilize the Grand Fleet, we strip defenses from 1,000 worlds. And if the humans have more surprises waiting, they are one system." Drakthon's mandibles clicked in anger. "One primitive world that got lucky. We will crush them and use their ashes as a lesson to any other species that considers defiance." Vormath nodded slowly. "Very well. The Council votes now. All in favor of mobilizing the Grand Fleet for the extermination of humanity?" Every council member voted yes. Even Telena, despite her reservations. The decision was made. Humanity would be erased from existence. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, Captain Sarah Okafor stood on the bridge of the UED Defiant, a heavy cruiser on patrol near the Proxima Centauri colonies. She was reviewing reports from the Intelligence Division when the tactical officer interrupted. "Captain, we're receiving a tight beam transmission from Earth Command. Priority Alpha." Sarah's pulse quickened. Priority Alpha meant fleet-wide mobilization. "Put it through." "Purdingar. Put it through." Admiral Volkov appeared on screen, and Sarah saw the exhaustion in her commander's eyes. Elena had been working non-stop since the battle, coordinating Earth's defenses and processing intelligence from captured Concordat ships. "Captain Okafor, we've decrypted communication logs from Jakara's flagship. The Concordat Council has authorized deployment of their Grand Fleet. 2 million vessels are being assembled and will arrive in Sol System within 6 months. Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Admiral, we have 10,000 ships, even with our tactical advantages. We're not going to fight them in Sol System," Elena interrupted. "We're going to hit them before they arrive. New orders are being transmitted now. The Defiant is assigned to Strike Force Valkyrie. You'll be attacking Concordat military infrastructure across a 50 light-year sphere. Supply depots, shipyards, communication relays. We're going to teach them what total war means. Admiral, that's a massive escalation. We'll be attacking Concordat core worlds. They declared war on us first," Elena said coldly. "They came to our home, planning genocide. Now, they get to learn what happens when you fight humans. We don't play defense. We take the fight to the enemy. Every battle we win on their territory is one we don't have to fight on ours." Sarah nodded slowly. "Understood, Admiral. The Defiant is ready." "One more thing," Elena said. "You're not just hitting military targets. Intelligence suggests the Concordat has been suppressing dozens of species, holding them in economic servitude. Your secondary mission is to make contact with these oppressed species. Offer them freedom. Turn the Concordate's subjects against them. You want us to start a revolution? I want you to burn their empire from the inside while we burn it from the outside. Volkov out. The screen went dark. Sarah turned to her crew. Navigation. Plot a course for the Aldebaran sector. Communications. Send a message to all ships in Strike Force Valkyrie. We're going hunting. The Concordate military complex at Aldebaran VII was a massive orbital station, home to 30,000 support staff, and a fleet maintenance facility capable of servicing 500 ships simultaneously. It had stood for 3 centuries without ever facing attack. The Concordate's military doctrine was entirely offensive. They had never needed to defend their infrastructure. That changed when Sarah Okafor arrived with 50 human ships. The attack began at 0400 local station time. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, far beyond normal detection range. They spent 6 hours analyzing the station's defenses, identifying patrol patterns and weapon placements. Then Strike Force Valkyrie split into 3 groups and accelerated to attack speed. Station Commander Greltok first became aware of the attack when alarms started screaming. His tactical display showed human ships appearing across the system, moving at velocities that should have burned out their engines. They weren't following standard approach vectors. They were coming from multiple angles simultaneously. All defensive platforms, open fire, scramble the garrison fleet, Greltok ordered. The station's automated defenses activated, energy weapons tracking the incoming human vessels. But the humans had learned from the Battle of Earth. Their ships didn't try to dodge. They used their energy-absorbing armor to shrug off hits that would have crippled Concordat vessels. The garrison fleet, 200 ships, launched from their docking bays and moved to intercept. They formed a defensive wall between the station and the attacking humans. It was textbook Concordat tactics. Present a unified front, concentrate firepower, overwhelm the enemy. Sarah watched from the Defiance Bridge as the Concordat ships formed up. They're doing exactly what we expected. Helm. Execute Serpent Maneuver. The human fleet suddenly split, individual ships breaking formation and accelerating on random vectors. Some dove below the plane of battle, others climbed above it. A dozen ships charged straight at the Concordat line, drawing fire, while the rest circled around the flanks. Greltok tried to maintain formation, but human ships were faster and more maneuverable than his vessels. Within minutes, the neat defensive line had been pulled apart. Concordat captains found themselves fighting individual duels with human ships that refused to follow proper engagement protocols. One Concordat destroyer fired a full plasma volley at the Defiant. Sarah's tactical officer reported, "Direct hit, Captain. Hull temperature increasing, but armor holding. Damage minimal. Return fire," Sarah ordered. Railgun batteries. Full salvo. Full salvo. Resavory 1. Full salvo. Full salvo. Full salvo. The Defiant shuddered as its kinetic weapons launched thousands of tungsten projectiles. The Concordat destroyer's shields flared, stopping most of the rounds, but the sheer volume of fire overwhelmed the defensive systems. Dozens of projectiles punched through, tearing into the destroyer's hull. Atmosphere vented from multiple breaches. "Target neutralized," the tactical officer reported. Sarah watched the damaged destroyer drift, life pods launching from its hull. "Do not target the pods. Let them escape. I want survivors to report what happened here." The battle lasted 40 minutes. The human fleet systematically destroyed every Concordat ship that didn't retreat. Then they turned their attention to the station itself. "Broadcast on all frequencies," Sarah ordered. "This is Captain Sarah Okafor of the United Earth Defense Force to Aldebaran Station. You have 5 minutes to evacuate all personnel to escape craft. After that, we're destroying the facility. This is your only warning." Greltok stared at the message in disbelief. "They're giving us time to evacuate?" "It appears so, Commander," his communications officer said. "Why? This makes no tactical sense." But Greltok had no time to puzzle it out. He ordered immediate evacuation. 30,000 Concordat personnel flooded into escape pods and shuttles, fleeing the station in a chaotic rush. The humans didn't fire on them. They simply waited, ships holding position around the station, like predators circling wounded prey. When the 5 minutes expired, the human fleet opened fire. Railguns and missiles tore into the station's structure. Without shields or armor, the civilian facility came apart like paper in a storm. Fuel tanks exploded. Docking bays collapsed. Within 10 minutes, 3 centuries of Concordat infrastructure was reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Sarah watched the destruction impassively. Communications. Broadcast this message on all Concordat emergency channels. The United Earth Defense Force does not target civilians. We do not want to kill you. But every military facility, every warship, every weapon platform that supports the Concordat's war machine is now a legitimate target. Tell your leaders to stand down. Tell them humanity offers one chance at peace. Continued aggression will be met with total warfare. As the message transmitted, Sarah's intelligence officer spoke up. Captain, we're receiving a response. Not from the Concordat, but from an encrypted channel. Someone on the planet below wants to talk. Sarah frowned. Can you trace the source? It's coming from the industrial district. According to our intelligence, that's where the Thesh population lives. They're a client species. Forced laborers who run the factories. Put them through. A new figure appeared on screen. It was vaguely humanoid, but with gray skin and large eyes adapted for dim light. The creature looked nervous but determined. Human captain, it said through a translation system. My name is Kelvor. I speak for the Thesh people. We have watched your attack. You spare civilians. You fight the Concordat, not innocent workers. Is this true? Sarah chose her words carefully. The Thesh are oppressed by the Concordat? For 300 years, they force us to work in their factories. They take our resources, our freedom. They say, this is the price of civilization. But we are not civilized. We are slaves. What do you want from us, Kelvor? We want what you have. Freedom, independence, the right to determine our own future. If you fight the Concordat, we will help you. There are 12 Thesh colony worlds, millions of workers who build Concordat ships and weapons. If we strike, if we sabotage production, it will hurt them more than any battle. Sarah felt a surge of hope. This was exactly what Admiral Volkov had wanted. Kelvor, the United Earth Defense Force offers you an alliance. We will support your freedom. In return, you provide intelligence on Concordat operations. We fight their military. You fight their economy. Together, we bring down an empire built on oppression. We accept, Kelvor said immediately. But human captain, you must understand, there are hundreds of species like us. The Concordat controls through fear and force. If you can prove they can be beaten, others will rise. The empire will collapse from within. After the transmission ended, Sarah sat back in her chair, processing what had just happened. Strike Force Valkyrie had been sent to destroy military targets. Instead, they had just sparked a revolution. Communications. Send a priority report to Earth Command. We've made first contact with a resistance movement. Recommend immediate expansion of diplomatic and intelligence operations to support Concordat client species uprisings. Her executive officer, Lieutenant Chen, no relation to Ambassador Marcus Chen, looked worried. Captain, we're opening a second front. This could spiral into something much bigger than a war between Earth and the Concordat. Good, Sarah said grimly. The Concordat wanted to make an example of us. Instead, we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you build an empire on oppression. Every species they've enslaved is a weakness. Every world they control through fear is a potential rebellion. We're not just fighting a war, we're lighting a fire that will burn their entire civilization to ash. Over the next 3 months, Strike Force Valkyrie hit 17 Concordat military installations. They destroyed supply depots, shipyards, and communication relays. But more importantly, they made contact with 9 different client species. Each one joined the growing resistance movement. The Concordat Council watched in horror as their empire began to fracture. Worlds that had been peaceful for centuries erupted in rebellion. Factory workers sabotaged production. Cargo ships carrying supplies mysteriously suffered navigation errors and delivered their cargoes to the wrong systems. Intelligence networks that had operated for millennia suddenly went dark as native agents betrayed their Concordat masters. High Counselor Vormath stood before the council, trying to maintain order as delegates shouted over each other. "Order," he bellowed. "Order. Yes, the humans are proving more troublesome than expected. Yes, some of our client species have been corrupted by their propaganda, but this changes nothing. The Grand Fleet is assembled. 2 million ships are ready to launch. We will crush Earth and then systematically pacify every rebellious world. The Concordat has survived for 10,000 years. We will survive this." But privately, Vormath read intelligence reports that terrified him. Human ships were operating across 50 light-years of space. They struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. More worrying, they were winning every engagement. Concordat forces had superior numbers, but inferior tactics. The humans fought like nothing the Council had ever encountered. They used ambushes, guerrilla warfare, and psychological operations that turned every battle into a nightmare. And now, with client species rising in rebellion, the Concordat had to divert ships to occupation duty, weakening the Grand Fleet before it even launched. Worst of all, the intelligence reports included interrogations of Admiral Jakara. The captured Concordat commander had been thoroughly debriefed by human intelligence officers. What he told them chilled Vormath to his core. According to Jakara, the humans had specifically asked about Concordat decision-making procedures. They wanted to know how the Council reached consensus, who held real power, and what would cause internal fractures in the alliance. They asked about the Concordat's past wars, their methods of pacification, their treatment of defeated species. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were studying their enemy with the thoroughness of scientists dissecting a specimen. They wanted to understand the Concordat completely, not just militarily but politically, economically, and psychologically. "What are they planning?" Vormath whispered to himself, staring at the reports. He would find out soon enough. The Grand Fleet was scheduled to launch in 2 months. 2 million ships would descend on Sol System and erase humanity from existence. It was overkill on a scale never before attempted, but the Council was taking no chances. Humanity would burn, and with them, any species foolish enough to support their rebellion. But as Vormath approved the final launch orders, he couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The humans had been ready for the initial attack fleet. They had turned their home system into a fortress while pretending to be weak and unprepared. If they had been planning for 50 years, what else had they built in the darkness of their solar system? What other surprises were waiting for the Concordat when they arrived at Earth? And why, despite commanding 2 million ships, did Vormath feel like he was sending his forces into a trap? The Oort cloud, the outer edge of the Sol system, was a realm of frozen darkness where comets drifted in slow orbits. It was here, 50 billion kilometers from Earth's sun, that humanity had built its greatest secret. Admiral Elena Volkov stood in the command center of Ragnarok Station, a massive installation carved into a dwarf planet that officially didn't exist. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of 2 million Concordat ships converging on the inner solar system. "They're coming," her intelligence chief, Colonel Park, said unnecessarily. "The Grand Fleet will arrive at Saturn's orbit in 3 days." Elena nodded, her face calm. She had been expecting this, planning for it. "What's the status of the Hellgate project?" "All systems are operational," Park reported. 30 stellar igniters are positioned and ready. The quantum entanglement network is stable across all 10,000 ships. We're as ready as we're going to be. See, we see. Then it's time, Elena said. Send the recall order. All strike forces are to return to Sol system immediately. We're going to make our stand at the Hellgate Nebula. The Hellgate Nebula was a stellar nursery, a vast cloud of gas and dust where new stars were being born. It was also the perfect place for an ambush. The Concordat Grand Fleet would have to pass through it to reach Earth. Dense clouds would interfere with sensors. Magnetic fields would disrupt communications. And the raw materials for star formation were everywhere. Raw materials that could be weaponized. Captain Sarah Okafor received the recall order while her ship was patrolling near a Concordat colony world. She had been running raids for 3 months, hitting supply lines and coordinating with resistance movements. Now it was time to return home. As the Defiant accelerated toward Earth, Sarah gathered her senior officers in the briefing room. Admiral Volkov is planning something big. We're going to face 2 million enemy ships. I want everyone to understand what that means. We're outnumbered 200 to 1. By any conventional military analysis, we should be annihilated. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Ramos, spoke up. No, Sarah agreed. We're going to use every advantage we have. Our ships are faster and tougher. Our crews are better trained. And we have weapons the Concordat can't imagine. But more than that, we have something they lost millennia ago. We remember what it means to fight for survival. She activated a holographic display showing the Hellgate Nebula. This is where we make our stand. The Concordat thinks they're overwhelming us with numbers. Instead, they're flying into the most dangerous battlefield humanity has ever created. The Concordat Grand Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Hellgate Nebula. High Counselor Vormath observed from his command ship, the Eternal Victory. A vessel 5 kilometers long and bristling with enough weapons to crack a planet. Around him, 2 million ships formed up in a formation so vast, it took hours for the fleet to fully organize. Every major Concordat species had contributed forces. The Xantharians, the Krillians, the Asurians, and 70 other species. This wasn't just a military operation. It was a statement. The full might of galactic civilization, united to crush one upstart species. What's the status of the human fleet? Vormath asked his intelligence officer. We're detecting approximately 10,000 human vessels positioned within the nebula, sir. They're using the gas clouds for cover, but we have their general location. They're outnumbered and cornered. Vormath allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then we finish this. All ships, advance into the nebula. Weapons free. Destroy every human vessel you encounter. No mercy. No surrender. Today, humanity's defiance ends. The Grand Fleet began its advance, a wave of ships spreading across thousands of cubic kilometers of space. They entered the nebula, and immediately their sensors began showing interference. The gas clouds were denser than expected, charged with electromagnetic radiation that scrambled long-range detection. Maintain formation, Vormath ordered. Activate close-range scanners. The humans can't hide forever. What Vormath didn't know was that the humans weren't hiding. They were preparing. Elena watched from Ragnarok Station as the Concordat fleet entered the nebula. They took the bait. Tactical. Activate. Phase 1. Let's show them what happens when you fight humans on a battlefield we designed. Throughout the nebula, objects that had been drifting in the gas clouds suddenly came to life. They were called stellar igniters, devices that humanity had spent 5 years developing. Each igniter was essentially a specialized nuclear weapon designed to trigger fusion reactions in hydrogen-rich environments. The Hellgate Nebula was the perfect target. It was filled with dense clouds of hydrogen, the raw fuel of stars. All it needed was a spark. The igniters activated simultaneously. 30 points of nuclear fire burst into existence across the nebula. The nuclear explosions triggered chain reactions in the hydrogen clouds. What had been cold gas suddenly became searingly hot plasma, Temperatures soared to millions of degrees. The nebula began to burn. Vormath stared in horror as his tactical display lit up with alerts. "What's happening?" "Sir, the nebula is undergoing spontaneous fusion reactions. Multiple regions are reaching stellar temperatures." "That's impossible. Nebulae don't just ignite," his science officer interrupted, voice shaking. "Sir, it's not natural. The humans are weaponizing the nebula itself. They're creating artificial stars throughout the fleet formation." Thousands of Concordat ships found themselves suddenly surrounded by expanding spheres of plasma. Ships without sufficient heat shielding were incinerated instantly. Others scrambled to retreat, colliding with each other in the chaos. The neat formation dissolved into pandemonium as captains tried desperately to escape the burning gas clouds. Then the human fleet struck. 10,000 ships emerged from their hiding positions, attacking from multiple vectors simultaneously. They moved through the burning nebula with confidence, their sensors adapted to operate in the extreme conditions. They had practiced in these environments for months. Sarah Okafor brought the Defiant screaming out of a gas cloud, weapons blazing. Her target was a Concordat battle group trying to reform defensive positions. "All batteries, fire at will. Target their command ships." So confusion. The human fleet didn't try to hold territory or maintain formation. They attacked like wolves, harrying a much larger prey animal, striking at weak points and then vanishing back into the nebula. Concordat ships tried to return fire, but hit empty space more often than targets. "This is madness," Vormath shouted as his fleet took horrific casualties. "They're destroying star systems to win a battle. What kind of species does this?" "A desperate one," his tactical officer replied, "or one that values victory over everything else." But Vormath realized it was worse than that. The humans weren't desperate. They were confident. They had lured 2 million ships into a death trap and sprung it with perfect timing. This wasn't the action of a species fighting for survival. This was the action of apex predators who had chosen their killing ground carefully. "All ships, retreat from the nebula," Vormath ordered. "Reform outside the..." His communications officer interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's broadcasting on all frequencies." "From the humans. Put it through." Admiral Elena Volkov appeared on every screen in every Concordat ship. Behind her, the stars burned. "High Counselor Vormath, this is Admiral Volkov of United Earth Defense Force. You came here with 2 million ships to exterminate my species. I want you to understand what you're facing. Humanity doesn't surrender. We don't kneel. And when you threaten our home, we don't just fight back. We show you exactly what we're capable of." She gestured, and the view changed to show the burning nebula, Concordat ships fleeing through walls of plasma. "You thought you knew warfare. You don't. For 10,000 years, your Concordat has enforced peace by crushing anyone who might challenge you. You've forgotten what real war looks like. Let me remind you. Arc." The view changed again, showing tactical data. "Our ships are linked through quantum entanglement, meaning we have instantaneous fleet coordination. Your communications take seconds to transmit. We think faster than you can react. Our armor is designed to absorb your weapons. Our tactics are designed to exploit your doctrine. And our willingness to weaponize entire star systems means we'll always have the advantage on any battlefield we choose." Vormath felt cold dread settling in his chest. Already he had lost over 100,000 ships, with more dying every minute. The Grand Fleet was supposed to be invincible. Instead, it was being slaughtered. Elena continued. "But here's what you need to understand, Vormath. This isn't just a military defeat. We've been coordinating with resistance movements across your empire. Right now, on 300 worlds, your client species are rising in rebellion. Your supply lines are being sabotaged. Your subject peoples are learning that the Concordat can be beaten. Every ship you lose here is a symbol of your weakness. Every world that breaks free is a crack in your empire." She leaned forward, her eyes hard. "You wanted to make an example of Earth. Congratulations. You succeeded. Now every oppressed species in the galaxy knows that the mighty Concordat can be defeated by one determined world. You've shown them that your empire is built on fear. And fear only works until someone refuses to be afraid. Vormoth found his voice. You're destroying yourselves along with us. The resources you're expending on this war will bankrupt your world. Even if you win this battle, you'll be vulnerable to the next threat. That's where you're wrong, Elena said. We're not vulnerable. We're prepared. While you were building an empire, we were building a military-industrial complex that can sustain warfare indefinitely. Our entire economy has been geared toward this conflict for 50 years. We have factories on Mars, asteroid mines throughout the belt, automated construction facilities in the Kuiper Belt, producing ships faster than you can destroy them. This isn't our last stand. Vormoth, this is just the beginning. She made a gesture. And throughout the nebula, more stellar igniters activated. New regions of gas began to burn. Concordat ships that thought they had escaped found themselves facing walls of nuclear fire. You have one chance to survive this battle, Elena said. Order your fleet to stand down and surrender. We'll accept your capitulation and begin negotiations for a permanent peace. Or you can continue fighting and watch your grand fleet burn. Choose now. Vormoth looked at his tactical display. He had lost 300,000 ships. At the current rate of attrition, his fleet would be combat ineffective within hours. The humans were systematically destroying the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. But surrender was unthinkable. The Concordat had never surrendered. If he capitulated now, the Empire would fracture. Every client species would see it as weakness. Rebellions would spread like wildfire. We fight, he said grimly. All ships, engage human forces. If we're going to die, we die taking these humans with us. Elena sighed, as if she had expected this response. So be it. All human forces, execute Ragnarok Protocol. Show them what total war means. What happened next would be recorded in history as the Battle of Hellgate. Though historians would debate whether it was a battle or a massacre, the human fleet revealed weapons that the Concordat had never encountered. Swarms of autonomous drones that couldn't be jammed or hacked. Relativistic kinetic weapons that traveled at significant fractions of light speed. Cyber warfare packages that infected Concordat ship systems through their own communication networks. But the most terrifying weapons were the humans themselves. They fought with a ferocity and creativity that shocked Concordat forces. Ships that should have retreated when damaged, instead, rammed into enemy vessels. Captains who should have surrendered when outnumbered, instead fought to the last crew member. The humans didn't fight like they were trying to survive. They fought like they were trying to send a message. Sarah Okafor found herself in command of a small battle group when the Defiant took critical damage. All ships, form up on my position. We're going to punch through their center line. Her executive officer looked at her in disbelief. Captain, there are 500 enemy ships between us and open space. We have 20 ships. The math doesn't work. Then we change the math, Sarah said. Target their flagship, the Eternal Victory. We're going to decapitate their command structure. 20 human ships charged straight at the heart of the Concordat fleet. They took horrific damage, but their energy-absorbing armor let them survive long enough to reach their target. The Defiant, trailing atmosphere and burning from multiple impacts, crashed through the defensive screen around Vormoth's flagship. All weapons fire, Sarah ordered. The Defiant unleashed everything it had. Railguns, missiles, laser batteries, even its emergency stores of nuclear weapons. The Eternal Victory's shields flared and died. Its armor cracked. Systems failed across the massive vessel. On the bridge, Vormoth was thrown from his command chair as the ship shuddered. Sir, we've lost main power. Hull breaches on multiple decks. We're dead in space. Vormoth pulled himself up, looking at the tactical display. The Defiant was dying, but it had accomplished its mission. The Concordat fleet's command ship was crippled, and without central coordination, the 2 million ships were just a mob of individual vessels. "This is High Counselor Vormoth to all Concordat forces," he said quietly. "Stand down. Cease fire." Across the battlefield, Concordat ships powered down their weapons. The Grand Fleet, bloodied and broken, submitted to human authority. In the span of 6 hours, 2 million ships had been defeated by 10,000. Elena Volkov watched from Ragnarok Station as the Concordat fleet surrendered. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion. Casualties? Casualties? "We lost 4,200 ships," Colonel Park reported. "Another 2,000 are damaged." Total casualties. Approximately 300,000 personnel killed or wounded. Elena closed her eyes. 300,000 humans had died to defend their species, but they had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had won. "Send medical ships to assist Concordat survivors," she ordered. "And prepare detention facilities. We're going to have a lot of prisoners." As the battle ended, Earth received a transmission from across the galaxy. It was from Kelvor. The Thesh resistance leader Sarah had contacted months ago. "Admiral Volkov, this is Kelvor. We have news. The Concordat's defeat at Hellgate has triggered uprisings across 300 worlds. The Empire is collapsing. Client species are declaring independence. The Concordat Council has lost control. Whatever you did at Hellgate, it didn't just win you a battle. It started a revolution that's spreading across the galaxy." Elena sat down heavily, processing the information. They had set out to defend Earth. Instead, they had shattered an empire that had stood for 10 millennia. The galaxy would never be the same. But as she looked at the casualty reports, at the names of ships and crew members who would never return home, she wondered at what cost. Humanity had proven it could burn stars and break empires. The question was, what would they become in the aftermath? 6 months after the Battle of Hellgate, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Concordat Council, once the supreme authority over 800 species, now controlled fewer than 100 worlds. Rebellions had swept through their empire like wildfire. Species that had been oppressed for centuries took their chance at freedom, and many succeeded. But freedom created chaos. Without the Concordat's iron-fisted order, old conflicts reignited. Species that had been forced into peace now fought each other. Trade networks collapsed. Pirates and warlords filled power vacuums. The galaxy was descending into disorder, and many blamed humanity for unleashing this chaos. Marcus Chen stood before the Assembly of Free Worlds, a gathering of 300 newly independent species on the neutral world of Haven. He looked tired. The past months had been spent in endless negotiations, trying to build something stable from the ruins of the Concordat. "Representatives," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "We are here because the old order has fallen. The Concordat ruled through fear and suppression. They maintained peace by crushing anyone who might disturb it. That peace is gone. Now we must decide. What comes next?" A delegate from the Krillian worlds, the insectoid species that had been one of the Concordat's military powers, stood. "What comes next is simple. Humanity must take responsibility for what they've done. You destroyed the Concordat. You must now enforce the peace they maintained. In Diznanwan. Akara. 111. Marcus shook his head. "Earth did not fight a war to become a new empire. We fought for our survival and the freedom of oppressed peoples. We will not replace one tyranny with another. Then the galaxy will burn." The Krillian delegate hissed. "Without central authority, there is only chaos. Already we see wars erupting across 20 sectors. Species are settling old grudges. Without someone to enforce peace, millions will die." "The Krillian delegate is right," another voice said. It was Talina of the Asurian Collective, one of the few moderate Concordat leaders who had survived the Empire's collapse. But perhaps the answer is not a human empire. Perhaps it is something new. A true commonwealth, where all species have equal voice. Marcus felt a spark of hope. That's what we've been proposing. The Sol Accords. A framework for peaceful coexistence, based on mutual respect, not fear. Words. The Krillian spat. What happens when those pretty words meet reality? When species disagree? When borders are contested? Someone must have the power to enforce decisions. Then we share that power. Marcus said. We create a peacekeeping force drawn from all member species. We establish courts where disputes can be resolved. We build an economy based on fair trade, not exploitation. It won't be perfect, but it will be just. Before the Krillian could respond, alarms began sounding. A young officer rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently to Marcus. His face went pale. Representatives, we've just received reports from the Outer Rim. A human fleet has attacked 3 worlds, declaring them part of a new Earth empire. They're claiming these attacks are necessary to maintain order, but they're not acting under Earth government authority. This is a rogue faction. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had been considering joining the Sol Accords now looked at each other with suspicion and fear. If humanity couldn't control its own military, how could anyone trust them? Marcus activated his communication device. This is Ambassador Chen. I need to speak with Admiral Volkov immediately. Elena sat in her office on Ragnarok Station, now converted from a military base to a diplomatic facility. She looked at the intelligence reports spread across her desk, and her jaw tightened in anger. The rogue fleet was led by Admiral Dmitry Kozlov, a hero of the Battle of Hellgate, who commanded the Third Fleet. He and his supporters believed that humanity's military victory gave them the duty to rule the galaxy. They saw the post-Concordat chaos and concluded that only human leadership could restore order. Kozlov had taken his 50 ships and declared independence from Earth government. He was attacking worlds and forcing them to submit to Earth protection. In essence, he was building the very empire Marcus had promised wouldn't exist. Admiral, Marcus's face appeared on her screen. We have a crisis. You need to stop Kozlov before he destroys everything we've built. I'm already preparing a response fleet, Elena said grimly. But Marcus, this is bigger than one rogue admiral. There's a movement within our military. Officers who think we won the war, so we should rule the peace. They see the chaos out there and think strong leadership, our leadership, is the answer. That's exactly what the Concordat thought, Marcus said. They justified tyranny as necessary for peace. If we follow that path, we become what we fought against. I know, Elena said. That's why I'm going personally. I'm taking the fleet to intercept Kozlov, and I'm bringing every piece of evidence we have about the Concordat's atrocities. He needs to see what happens when you believe the ends justify the means. 3 days later, Elena's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel near the planet Theros, one of the worlds Kozlov had conquered. His ships held orbit above the planet, weapons trained on population centers. The message was clear: submit or be destroyed. Admiral Kozlov appeared on Elena's communication screen. He was a tall man with a scarred face and cold eyes. Admiral Volkov. I wondered when Earth would send someone to interfere. Interfere? Elena's voice was ice. Dmitri, you've committed acts of war against independent worlds. You've violated every principle we fought for. Stand down immediately. 1. I'm doing what's necessary, Kozlov said. Look at the galaxy, Elena. Without the Concordat, it's chaos. Species are slaughtering each other. Trade has collapsed. Millions are dying. Someone needs to restore order, and humanity is the only species strong enough to do it. By becoming the next Concordat? Elena asked. By ruling through fear and force? By being realistic, Kozlov snapped. You can play diplomat all you want. But the galaxy respects one thing: power. We proved at Hellgate that we're the apex predators of this galaxy. Now we use that power to create the peace everyone claims to want. Elena brought up a holographic display. I want to show you something. This is from the Concordat archives we captured. Do you know how the Concordat started? Kozlov looked impatient. They unified their region through military conquest. I know the history. Done. 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 Do you know why? Elena asked. 10,000 years ago, the Xantharian Empire faced exactly what we're facing now. Their region of space was chaotic. Species fought constantly. So the Xantharians decided to enforce peace. They told themselves it was temporary. Axid, just until order was restored. Just until everyone learned to cooperate. She pulled up images of destroyed worlds. But once they had power, they never gave it up. Every species that might challenge them was preemptively crushed. Every world that wanted independence was labeled a threat. They told themselves they were maintaining peace, but really, they were just maintaining their own dominance. 10,000 years later, they had become the monsters they set out to stop. I'm not a monster, Kozlov said, but his voice wavered slightly. Neither were they, at first, Elena said quietly. They were pragmatists who thought they were doing the right thing. Just like you. But power corrupts, Dmitri. We've seen it throughout human history. Good people who convince themselves that oppression is justified if it's for a good cause. We fought the Concordat because we refused to kneel. Now you're asking other species to kneel to us. Can't you see the hypocrisy? I see a galaxy dying, Kozlov said. And I see the power to save it being wasted on idealistic nonsense. Then you've forgotten what we're fighting for, Elena said. Stand down, Dmitri. That's an order from your commanding officer, and from Earth government. Return to Sol System, and face trial. Or I'll be forced to stop you. Kozlov laughed bitterly. You'll fight me? Your own people? You'd rather see humans kill humans than let me bring order to chaos? Yes, Elena said simply. Because if we don't stop you, we prove that humanity can't be trusted with power. We prove that every species that fears us is right to do so. We become the thing we hate. For a long moment, Kozlov was silent. Then, he shook his head. I'm sorry, Elena. I respect you. But I can't stand by and watch the galaxy burn when I have the power to stop it. If you want to stop me, you'll have to come through me. The screen went dark. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on her. She was about to order human ships to fire on other human ships. It was the nightmare scenario she had dreaded since the war began. All ships, she said quietly. This is Admiral Volkov. We are engaging Admiral Kozlov's fleet. I know many of you served with those crews. I know this feels wrong. But we cannot allow a military coup to succeed. We fought for freedom and democracy. Now we must defend those principles, even against our own people. Target their engines and weapon systems. Disable, don't destroy. These are our brothers and sisters. We bring them home alive if possible. The battle that followed was brief and brutal. Kozlov's 50 ships fought with skill and determination, but they were outnumbered 3-1. More importantly, Elena's fleet knew every tactical doctrine Kozlov would use. They had trained together, fought together. Now, they fought each other. Sarah Okafor, commanding a new ship after the Defiant's destruction, found herself facing off against the UES Valiant, a ship she had served on years ago. She knew the captain, had shared meals with the crew. Now she was firing on them. Target their engine section, she ordered, her voice heavy. Railgun batteries, minimum power. I want them disabled. Not destroyed. The Valiant tried to evade, but Sarah anticipated the maneuver. Tungsten rounds punched through the engine housing, crippling the ship's main drives. The Valiant drifted, powerless. Across the battle space, the same scene repeated. Kozlov's fleet was systematically disabled. When his flagship finally lost power, Marines boarded and arrested him without resistance. The coup was over. Elena sat in the detention facility, looking at Kozlov through a transparent barrier. The man looked broken, his earlier confidence gone. "I was trying to help," he said quietly. "I saw the chaos and thought we could fix it." "I know," Elena said. "But Dmitri, the galaxy doesn't need a savior. It needs to learn to save itself. We can offer assistance, share technology, provide security, when asked, but we can't force our vision of peace on others. That's what the Concordat did, and it created the very chaos you're trying to prevent." "So what happens now?" Kozlov asked. "We just let the galaxy tear itself apart?" "No," Elena said. "We support the species that want to build something better. We help create frameworks for cooperation. We offer examples of how democracy and freedom can work, but we let them make their own choices, even if those choices lead to conflict. Freedom means the right to make mistakes." She stood to leave, then paused. "You're going to stand trial, Dmitri. Not as a traitor, but as someone who made a terrible mistake. I'm going to recommend counseling and reassignment. Not imprisonment. Because I understand why you did what you did. The question is, do you understand why it was wrong?" Kozlov looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I think I'm beginning to." 3 months later, the trial of High Counselor Vormoth and the surviving Concordat leadership began on Haven. It was broadcast across the galaxy, with representatives from hundreds of species attending. The charges were extensive: genocide, forced labor, suppression of sentient rights, and countless other crimes committed over millennia. Marcus Chen sat in the prosecutor's position, presenting evidence gathered from Concordat archives. He showed the assembly documented cases of species that had been exterminated for showing too much military capability. He revealed the systematic exploitation of client species. He exposed the Concordat's plan to exterminate humanity, decided years before the actual ultimatum was delivered. Vormoth sat in the defendant's chair, his scaled face impassive. When given a chance to speak, he stood, slowly. "Everything we did," he said, "was to maintain peace. Yes, we were harsh. Yes, we suppressed species that might threaten stability. But for 10,000 years, we prevented the kind of galaxy-wide warfare that would have killed billions. Our methods were imperfect, but our goal was noble." "Noble?" a voice called from the gallery. It was Kelvor, the Thesh resistance leader. "You enslaved my people for 3 centuries and called it noble. You stole our resources, our freedom, our dignity. You call that peace? We call it order," Vormoth said. "And without it, look what happened. The moment we fell, wars erupted everywhere. Billions have died in the chaos since Hellgate. How many of those deaths are on humanity's conscience?" Marcus stood. "Those deaths are tragic, but they're not our fault. Species are choosing to fight each other. We can't stop that by conquering them. The only sustainable peace is one that's freely chosen." "Then you condemn the galaxy to endless war," Vormoth said. "Because species will always find reasons to fight. The strong will dominate the weak. That is nature." "Maybe," Marcus admitted. "But intelligent species can choose to rise above nature. We can build systems of law and cooperation. It won't be perfect. There will still be conflicts. But there'll be conflicts between free peoples, not slaves and masters." The trial continued for weeks. In the end, Vormoth and the Concordat leadership were found guilty. The sentence was exile to a remote world, where they would live out their lives unable to influence galactic politics. It was merciful compared to their crimes. But Marcus argued that showing mercy was important. It proved that justice could exist without vengeance. As the trial concluded, the Assembly of Free Worlds took a historic vote. 300 species signed the Sol Accords, creating the Galactic Commonwealth. It was a loose federation, not an empire. Each species maintained sovereignty, but agreed to principles of cooperation, peaceful conflict resolution, and mutual defense. The Commonwealth wasn't perfect. Many species refused to join, preferring isolation. Some regions remained lawless. Wars still happened. But for the first time in recorded history, the galaxy had a framework for peace based on consent, not conquest. Elena Volkov stood with Marcus Chen on Haven, watching the signing ceremony. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But it's better than the alternative. We've given them a chance. What they do with it is up to them." Elena nodded, but her expression was troubled. "We've proven we can burn stars and break empires. Every species in the galaxy knows it. Some see us as liberators. Others see us as the next threat. How do we prevent ourselves from becoming what we destroyed?" "That," Marcus said quietly, "is the question that will define the next century. We need to show the galaxy that power doesn't have to corrupt, that a strong species can choose restraint. It won't be easy." "No," Elena agreed. "It won't." 50 years after the fall of the Concordat, the galaxy had learned to live with its new reality. The Commonwealth had grown to 500 member species, though it remained more of a diplomatic organization than a government. Peace was maintained not through force, but through negotiation, trade agreements, and the mutual recognition that warfare hurt everyone. But the galaxy had not forgotten humanity's demonstration of power. The Battle of Hellgate was taught in history courses across 1,000 worlds. Some species remembered it as liberation, others remembered it as a warning. Admiral Elena Volkov had long since retired. She lived in a small house overlooking Lake Geneva, where the United Earth government had its headquarters. Her hair was fully white now, her face lined with years of difficult decisions. But her eyes remained sharp, and she still advised the government on military matters. When asked, she sat on her porch, watching the sunset, when a young officer arrived. He wore the uniform of the Remembrance Fleet, the peacekeeping force Earth maintained. It was much smaller than the wartime Armada, but still the most powerful military in known space. "Admiral Volkov," the officer said, saluting. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Zhang. I was hoping I could ask you some questions for a history project." Elena smiled. "I'm not an admiral anymore, young man. Just an old woman. But sit. Ask your questions." Zhang pulled out a recording device. "I've been researching the war and its aftermath. There's one thing I don't understand. After Hellgate, Earth could have ruled the galaxy. We had the military power and the moral authority. Why did we choose to step back?" Elena was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Because we remembered why we fought. Not for conquest, but for freedom. If we had seized power, we would have become the next Concordat, creating the same problems we thought we were solving." "But wouldn't a human-led galaxy be more peaceful?" Zhang asked. "We could prevent wars, enforce fairness, at the cost of everyone else's freedom," Elena interrupted gently. "Lieutenant, I've seen what happens when species believe they know what's best for everyone. The Concordat thought they were maintaining necessary order. In reality, they were maintaining their own power and calling it peace. We refused to follow that path. Some say it was a mistake," Zhang said. "There are still wars. The Commonwealth hasn't solved all problems." "Of course not," Elena said. "Freedom is messy. Democracy is complicated. But they're the only systems that respect the right of species to determine their own destiny. Yes, there are wars. But they're smaller than what we would have seen in a Concordat-style empire. And importantly, they're between free peoples who chose their path, not slaves obeying masters." She looked at the young officer seriously. "The question you should be asking isn't why we stepped back. It's whether we can maintain that restraint. Every generation of humans will face the temptation to use our power to shape the galaxy. You'll be tested. Your children will be tested. And the answer must always be the same. We help when asked, we defend the innocent, but we don't impose our will on others." Zhang thought about this. What about the Remembrance Fleet? Isn't that imposing our will? We patrol Commonwealth space, intervene in conflicts, with permission. Elena emphasized. The Remembrance Fleet operates under Commonwealth authority, not human authority. When we intervene, it's because member species requested assistance, and we're not the only species contributing to peacekeeping. Humans make up only 40% of the Remembrance Fleet now. The rest comes from allied species, who share our values. A chime interrupted them. Elena checked her communication device and frowned. I apologize, Lieutenant, but I need to take this. It's from Earth Command. She activated the device, and President Okafor appeared on screen. Yes, that Okafor. Sarah had left military service 20 years ago and entered politics, eventually becoming Earth's president. She looked concerned. Elena, we have a situation. First contact with a new species. They call themselves the Vakor. They're aggressive, expansionist, and they just attacked 3 Commonwealth worlds in the Deneb sector. Initial reports suggest their technology is comparable to pre-war Concordat level. They're demanding that local species submit to their empire. Elena felt old memories stirring. How is the Commonwealth responding? The attacked worlds requested help. The Commonwealth Council has authorized Remembrance Fleet intervention. How we handle it will define humanity's role in the galaxy for the next century. We need your advice. My advice? Elena smiled grimly. Don't make it about us. The Commonwealth should respond as a community, not as a human-led operation. Make sure other species are taking leadership roles. Show the Vakor. They're not facing humans. They're facing a united coalition. Sarah nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. But Elena, if the Vakor won't back down diplomatically, we'll need to demonstrate military capability, and humans are still the strongest military power in the Commonwealth. Then demonstrate carefully, Elena said. Use the minimum force necessary. Make it clear that victory doesn't interest us. Peace does. And for God's sake, don't weaponize any stars this time. Sarah laughed despite the tension. Noted. Elena, one more thing. There's a faction in Earth government arguing that this proves we need to expand our military. They say the galaxy is still dangerous, and we need to be ready to defend Commonwealth members. There will always be people arguing for bigger militaries, Elena said. The question is, are we expanding to defend or to dominate? Keep the military strong enough to protect our allies, but small enough that we're not tempted to use it for conquest. It's a difficult balance. After the call ended, Lieutenant Zhang looked at Elena with new understanding. The war never really ended for you, did it? The shooting stopped, Elena said. But the struggle continues. Every day, humanity must choose what kind of species we want to be. Protector or conqueror. Partner or ruler. It's exhausting. But it's necessary. 3 months later, Marcus Chen, now serving as Commonwealth Secretary General, stood before the Vakor delegation on a neutral station. The Vakor were reptilian. Their scales covered in bioluminescent patterns that shifted with their emotions. Currently, those patterns showed aggressive red. The Vakor commander, war leader Shraktor, radiated contempt. You are the species that destroyed the Concordat. I expected warriors. Instead, I find diplomats hiding behind words. Marcus smiled politely. War leader. Humanity has learned that violence is easy. Peace is the difficult path. We're offering you membership in the Commonwealth, trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense. All we ask is that you respect the sovereignty of other species. Respect? Shraktor's scales flashed brighter red. The strong do not respect the weak, they conquer them. The Concordat understood this, which is why they ruled for 10,000 years. You destroyed them and created chaos. Now, the Vakor will restore order. The Concordat fell precisely because they built their empire on conquest, Marcus said. Without the consent of their subjects, they had no stability. When humanity showed they could be beaten, the entire empire collapsed. Is that what you want for the Vakor? An empire built on sand. The Vakor are stronger than the Concordat, Shraktor said. We will not fall. That's what they said too, a new voice said. Ambassador Kelvor entered the chamber, now old and gray, but still influential. War leader. My people spent 3 centuries as Concordat slaves. When they fell, we gained freedom. Now you want to enslave us again. We refuse. Then you will be conquered, Shraktor said simply. Not easily, Kelvor replied. This commonwealth you sneer at? It represents 500 species. Billions of individuals who remember what tyranny feels like and refuse to return to it. You've attacked 3 worlds. But if you continue this war, you'll face the combined might of the Commonwealth. Is that really what you want? Shraktor's scales shifted to a cautious yellow. The Commonwealth would fight for 3 small worlds? That's what community means, Marcus said. An attack on one is an attack on all. The Commonwealth doesn't have an empire's strength, but it has something more powerful: unity based on shared values. Values? Shraktor laughed. Values don't win wars. Weapons do. And we know you humans have the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Values had, Marcus corrected. We disarmed significantly after the war. We keep enough military capacity to defend ourselves and assist allies, but we're not trying to dominate anyone. Then you're fools, Shraktor said. You won the right to rule the galaxy and threw it away. We won the right to live free, Marcus said. And we're offering you the same right. Join us. Trade with us. Learn from us. Or fight us and learn why 500 species chose cooperation over conquest. For a long moment, Shraktor stared at Marcus. Then his scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. You really believe this will work? That species can coexist without domination? It's working so far, Marcus said. Imperfectly. With setbacks and conflicts. But yes, it's working. The question is, do you want to be part of building something new, or do you want to repeat history's mistakes? The negotiation continued for weeks. In the end, the Vakor agreed to a ceasefire and observer status in the Commonwealth. They didn't fully join, but they stopped their attacks and began tentative trade relationships. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it proved that even aggressive species could be integrated into the peaceful order. But the Vakor situation revealed a problem. The Commonwealth needed a stronger collective defense, not a human military, but a truly multi-species force capable of responding to threats. The Remembrance Fleet expanded, with dozens of species contributing ships and personnel. Humans provided much of the advanced technology, but leadership was shared equally. Admiral Zhang, the young lieutenant, had been promoted rapidly, now commanded a mixed species task force. His crew included humans, Thesh, Asurians, even a few reformed Concordat species. They patrolled Commonwealth space, responding to distress calls and mediating conflicts. One day, Zhang's task force received a distress signal from an unknown ship on the edge of Commonwealth space. When they arrived, they found a vessel from a species no one had encountered before. The aliens were humanoid but with crystalline skin that refracted light in beautiful patterns. This is Admiral Zhang of the Commonwealth Remembrance Fleet, he broadcast. We received your distress call. Do you require assistance? The alien ship responded cautiously. We are the Crystalline. Our ship was damaged, fleeing from raiders. We fear you are more raiders coming to finish us. We're not raiders, Zhang said. We're peacekeepers. We'll help repair your ship and escort you to safe space. No payment required. The Crystalline captain appeared on screen, looking suspicious. Why would you help us? You don't know us. We have nothing to offer you, because that's what the Commonwealth does, Zhang said. We help because it's right. not because we expect something in return. Though if you're interested, we'd be happy to open diplomatic relations once your ship is repaired. As his engineering teams began helping the crystalline vessel, Zhang thought about his conversation with Elena Volkov 50 years ago. This was why humanity had stepped back from ruling the galaxy. So they could be this: helpers, partners, friends. Not conquerors or saviors, but one species among many working toward a common goal. The crystalline eventually joined the Commonwealth. They brought with them knowledge of advanced materials science that revolutionized ship construction across multiple species. It was a small example of how cooperation created benefits that conquest never could. On Earth, Elena Volkov celebrated her 100th birthday. Leaders from across the Commonwealth came to honor her, not as a conqueror, but as someone who had shown that power could be wielded with wisdom. At the celebration, she gave a short speech. "When I was a young officer," she said, "I believed strength meant the ability to destroy your enemies. Then I commanded the Black Midnight Armada and learned that true strength means the ability to show mercy. We proved we could burn stars. Now we must continue proving we can choose not to." She looked around the room at the assembled species. "The galaxy you live in today is imperfect. There are still conflicts, injustices, and challenges. But it's a galaxy where 500 species cooperate as equals, where strength doesn't automatically mean domination, where the weak don't have to live in fear of the strong. That's not because of humanity's military might. It's because of our collective choice to build something better. 50 years ago, we faced a choice. Use our victory to build an empire, or use it to build a community. We chose community. Now, every day, you all make that same choice. Choose wisely. Choose peace. Choose cooperation. And when you must use force, use it only to defend, never to conquer." She sat down to thunderous applause. Marcus Chen, sitting beside her, leaned over and whispered, "Do you think they'll remember? In another 100 years, when we're all gone, will they remember why we made these choices?" "Some will," Elena said. "Others will question them. There will always be those who think might makes right, who believe humanity should rule because we can. But as long as enough people remember why we chose restraint over conquest, we'll be okay." "And if they forget?" Marcus asked. Elena smiled sadly. "Then they'll learn the hard way, like the Concordat did. But I have faith, not in our perfection, but in our ability to learn from mistakes. We're not the first species to face these temptations, and we won't be the last. What matters is that we keep choosing the harder right over the easier wrong." The celebration continued late into the night. Representatives from hundreds of worlds mingled, sharing stories and making plans for future cooperation. In one corner, a young Thesh engineer talked excitedly with a human scientist about a joint research project. In another, a crystalline diplomat laughed at a joke told by a reformed Concordat officer. It was messy. It was imperfect. Species still had conflicts and disagreements, but they worked through them together. As partners, not as masters and slaves. Outside, beyond Earth's atmosphere, the Remembrance Fleet maintained its vigilant watch. Not as conquerors, but as guardians. Not to dominate, but to protect. The Black Midnight Armada that had once burned stars now served a higher purpose, proving that the most powerful weapon in the galaxy was the choice to use power wisely. 50 years after humanity had shown the galaxy it could make stars burn, they were still working to prove they could choose not to. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. In a small ship departing from Earth, a group of cadets from the Commonwealth Naval Academy looked back at the blue planet. They came from a dozen different species, all training together to serve in the Remembrance Fleet. One of them, a young human woman, asked her instructor a question. "Sir, I've studied the war, the Battle of Hellgate, all of it. I understand why we fought, but I don't understand why we stopped. With that much power, we could have made the galaxy perfect." The instructor, a veteran officer who had served at Hellgate, smiled. Perfect for whom? Perfect by whose definition? The Concordat thought they were creating a perfect galaxy. Instead, they created a prison. We learned that lesson at great cost. So we just let the galaxy be imperfect? The cadet asked. We help it become better, the instructor said. But we don't force our vision on others. We offer examples, provide assistance when asked, and defend the innocent. But we let others make their own mistakes and learn their own lessons. Because that's what freedom means. Not perfection, but the right to choose your own path. The cadet looked thoughtful. That sounds harder than just conquering everyone. It is. The instructor agreed. Much harder. But it's the only way to create lasting peace. Not through fear, but through cooperation. Not through force, but through choice. That's the legacy of Hellgate. We proved we could burn stars. Now we prove every day that we don't have to. The ship accelerated away from Earth, joining the thousands of vessels that maintained peace across the Commonwealth. Behind them, Earth's moon still bore the scars of the shipyards that had been carved into its surface. But those shipyards were now museums, monuments to a time when humanity had to fight for survival. The weapons were still there, carefully maintained but never used. A reminder, a warning, a promise. Humanity could still burn stars if necessary. They just chose not to. And in that choice lay their greatest triumph.